Bernie Madoff. Bernard Lawrence Bernie Madoff was an American financier who executed the largest Ponzi scheme in history, defrauding thousands of investors out of tens of billions of dollars over the course of at least 17 years, possibly longer. He was also a pioneer in electronic trading and chair of the NASDAQ in the early 1990s. On December 10, 2008, he confessed his wrongdoing to his sons, who worked at his firm. The following day, they turned him over to the authorities. Bernie remained adamant that his sons were not aware of his scheme. The fund's last statements indicated it had $64.8 billion in client assets. It is not certain when Madoff's Ponzi scheme began. He testified in court that it started in the early 1990s, but his account manager, Frank D. Pascali, who had been working at the firm since 1975, said the fraud had been occurring for as long as I remember. Even less clear is why Madoff carried out the scheme at all. I had more than enough money to support my lifestyle and my family's lifestyle. I didn't need to do this for that, he told Fishman, adding, I don't know why. Bernie Madoff was arrested on December 11, 2008. Madoff insisted he acted alone, though several of his colleagues were sent to prison. His elder son, Mark Madoff, committed suicide exactly 2 years after his father's fraud was exposed. Several of Madoff's investors also killed themselves. Andy Madoff died of cancer at age 48 in 2014. Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison and forced to forfeit $170 billion in 2009. His 3 homes and 4 boats were auctioned off by the U.S. Marshals. Madoff died of natural causes at the age of 82 in Federal Medical Center. Victor Bout. A suspected Russian arms dealer who frustrated authorities for more than a decade is set to go on trial in New York City after his arrest, where prosecutors hope to end what they say have been a long career transporting weapons and fueling conflicts around the world. Victor Bout was captured in March 2008 in Thailand after an elaborate sting operation run by the Drug Enforcement Administration, which used men posing as members of the Colombian rebel group called the FRAC to lure Mr. Bout to a meeting. Federal prosecutors say the phony FARC members negotiated with Mr. Bout to buy weapons to shoot down U.S. helicopters used to fight the illicit narcotics trade. Mr. Bout has pleaded not guilty to the 4 charges he is facing, including conspiracy to kill Americans and conspiracy to provide material support to a terrorist organization. He has called the charges a frame-up and says he is a legitimate businessman who never had any intentions of selling weapons. His lawyers argue that evidence will show there is no such conspiracy because he never planned to sell the men weapons. Bout, who was the subject of a book titled Merchant of Death, asserted his innocence during the sentencing, telling the judge through a Russian interpreter, I never intended to kill anyone. I never intended to sell arms to anyone. God knows this truth. He then pointed at federal agents sitting in the front row. These people know this truth, Bout said. They will live with this truth. God forgive you. You will answer to him, not to me. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison by a U.S. judge in New York. Bout was charged only in connection with the suspected arms deal, but U.S. authorities have said he has been involved in trafficking arms since the 1990s to dictators and conflict zones in Africa, South America, and the Middle East. Ding Yu-sing. Ding Yu-sing, also known as Ding Shu Miao, helped 23 businesses win railway construction contracts and funneled 49 million yuan worth of kickbacks to former railways minister Liu Ji-jun. She also offered sexual favors to Liu by arranging an unidentified number of women for him. The Beijing court said that the evidence in the case against her was clear, ordering she also pay a fine of 2.5 billion yuan and have assets worth 20 million yuan confiscated. After a high-profile trial last year, Liu received a suspended death sentence, a punishment that usually amounts to life in prison, for taking bribes and steering contracts to associates. China's Railways Ministry suffered a major blow to its image when a 2011 crash between 2 bullet trains killed 40 people. Alan Stanford. Robert Alan Stanford, who goes by Alan Stanford, is an American former banker that was convicted in 2012 of a Ponzi scheme following an investigation for securities fraud in excess of $7 billion. It was revealed that Alan Stanford had grossly misinformed his 50,000 investors about the level of professional management that they received. Allen and his associates were also suspected of possible dealings with Mexican drug cartels. Stanford's fraudulent scheme is the second largest in history, only behind Madoff's. Approximately 18,000 of his customers have not yet recovered their money, whereas a significant amount of Madoff's previous clients have. Stanford was first charged in 2009 by the Securities and Exchange Commission and in 2012 was eventually convicted. Once a billionaire and one of the richest men in America, Alan Stanford received a 110-year prison sentence in a 2012 ruling and has faced further indictments from the SEC in the United States. He has reportedly been attacked while serving his jail sentence and has consistently claimed that he is innocent and has been framed. Lap Sung. A Macau billionaire has been sentenced to 4 years in a US prison after he was convicted of bribing United Nations officials of over US $1.7 million as part of a construction scheme that prosecutors said aimed to turn Macau into an international hub. Lap Sung, 69, had no visible reaction to the sentence as it was read out on Friday, but before hearing it, he had told the judge he was full of regrets over his conviction. "I want to apologize to the courts for all the trouble my actions have caused," he said through an interpreter. He was convicted of bribing 2 ambassadors in exchange for their support of his scheme to build a UN conference center in Macau. As well as the prison sentence, has been fined US $1 million. Prosecutors had previously asked for a 6-year prison term and US $2 million in fines, while his defense had sought a non-prison sentence, describing him as a devoted family man and philanthropist. But U.S. District Judge Vernon Broderick said deserved the sentence in part because he threw his money around without pausing to consider the consequences, adding that became more aggressive as time went on. Was convicted on July 27, 2017, after a 5-week trial of 2 counts of violating the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, 1 count of paying bribes and gratuities, 1 count of money laundering, and 2 counts of conspiracy. That was it for today's video. We hope you like it. If you want to see more interesting videos, then make sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit the like button.